Greetings, EricWhitmoyer.com community. This is David. I'm one of the certified coaches here with Eric Whitmoyer, and we are talking about Eric's new book that he's got coming out called Success with Goals. And as we were kind of reading through that and getting ready to put that to print, kind of wanted to ask Eric a few questions about the title of the book. I know that naming a book is kind of like naming a business or a kid, and a lot of thought goes into it. And so I wanted to kind of pick Eric's brain a little bit about kind of the meaning of the title. So Eric, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. So let me start with the first question here. Success with goals, designing your life. What does that mean?
So great question. When I first started embarking on the idea of writing this book, one of the challenges that I struggled through was I had to do a lot of soul searching. I talked many times about goal setting. I've done speeches about goal setting. I've done thousands of goal setting sessions. But to actually take it, everything I learned over that period of time and put it into a book, I was like, how do I really make this one compelling, for people to understand and see the value in it. But then more importantly, two, really help them understand the ideology that I had behind my goal setting processes. And that was really the part that I struggled with initially. For me, first and foremost, I'd say that, this book is not about just setting a simple goal. It's not about New Year's resolutions. It's not about losing 20 pounds or getting that new promotion or making a few extra bucks or anything like that. It is very much about designing a life. So to your point in the question in the title, what does it mean to design your life? Well, I guess the best way to explain that is throughout the course of every day of our lives, we make a series of decisions. Many of those decisions we make on autopilot, meaning that our subconscious mind actually steps in and makes the decision for us, and we just kind of do what comes naturally to us. So for instance, this morning when you got up, David, you probably went through a series of ritual routine that you do when you get up. You get your son up, you do, whatever, you feed the dog, let the dog out, whatever that ritual is, you have that ritual in place, right? And that's embedded in you over a period of time because there are things that are important to you. For instance, you don't let the dog out, the dog pees on the floor, then you got to clean up the mess, right? You're trying
done that.
try to reduce those circumstances. You don't feed your son, he gets a little irritable, you yell at by your wife. Not a good place to be, right? You don't want your son to die of malnourishment. So the reality is that you have these rituals that you've developed over a period of time. And oftentimes what happens, they become a rut, these rituals. And so what ends up happening is people find themselves going through this series of rituals that don't really lead them to anything very empowering. They don't accomplish anything, and they kind of just go through life for all intents and purposes. And so the concept of designing your life is first recognizing that you have the power to decide where you want to go. People take a job because I have to, quote, pay the bills, right? And end quote. And the problem with that, concept is you could do so much more, right? But you don't allow yourself the opportunity to go take that chance, right? And so there's a ton of things that come into that, and we kind of feel like oftentimes as humans, we make these decisions, but we don't really make them. Life makes them for us. And so in the designing your life concept it's you consciously decide where you want to go next. And that really is done by a series of goal setting. Sitting down, looking at your life and saying, hey, these are the categories of my life. In my book, I represent 9 different categories. And I say, these are all the different areas of my life, and these are the things that are most important to me. And based on that, these are the things I really want to focus on. And this is what I want to achieve in that area of focus. And by doing that, now I've consciously taken control of my life, and I put a series of actions into place that I follow up on and I go after every day, and consequently I achieve goals. And that leads me down a different path than where my other rituals led me to. And we don't recognize that, but that's oftentimes what happens is we get caught in that rut and we don't do anything new or different. And so we're not designing a life, we're just living, we're existing. And to that point, you want to be able to kind of control and design your life through those conscious decisions that you make every day.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're talking about doing the same thing over and over, right? Which some people say is the definition of insanity. Sounds like what you're describing is actually the definition of mediocrity, right? If we don't do something new, we don't reach out for something new, and we don't set new goals. So yeah, I can absolutely see kind of where that designing your life concept comes into play. But why not stop there? Why did you also put in that, with purpose, designing your life with purpose? Where does that tie into all this?
Yeah, so that's a great point. And so as I kind of mentioned, leading through your life haphazardly, just kind of, just gliding along and not really kind of owning those things that happen. Plus the other part of it is that you have those different things that happen in life that really distract us and pull us away from whatever we're focused on, right? So I could go out there with all the best laid plans and saying, hey, I want to achieve this and I want to go do this and I want this promotion and I want to find that wife and have these kids and whatever that is that I want to do in my life. I want to climb this mountain, right? And as I get really ambitious with different things that I want to do, there's things that come along in our lives that distract us from that and keep us from achieving the things that we want to achieve, in the sense that they're just, some people believe different things, right? Some people believe it's maybe if you're religious, you believe that God's testing you and see how bad you want those goals, right? Or the universe is testing you, if that's your philosophy, But regardless, there are circumstances that happen to deter us from those goals and kind of challenges us to kind of look deep and say, how bad do I really want this? So the idea of with purpose, you really have to consciously make those decisions that this is what I want and this is how bad I want it. And so I have to purposely make the decisions that are going to lead me in that direction I want to go. I think that the biggest thing is that you have to truly know what your values are as a person, to find, and I say find your purpose, but the idea is that what my character is, what my values are, the kind of person that I am, that I feel that I am, or more importantly, that I want to become. Because who I am today may not be completely congruent with who I really ultimately want to be. Who I am as a person internally, if I'm forthright, I'm going to be forthright. If I'm honest, I'm going to be honest. But if I want to become something more than what I am today, for instance, I'm overweight by 50 pounds. I want to lose that weight. I want to look a certain way. I want to look the way I used to look when I was a professional kickboxer, right? So I have a vision in my mind of where I want to go, and that concept of on purpose, or with purpose, I go after my goals with that sense of urgency, that sense of I don't want to give up, right? The intensity of that. So that's a really important aspect of it. It really kind of stems from the kind of person that you are. So knowing your purpose, what's important to you, and then kind of applying that to your goals is really important. Because if you don't do that correctly, you won't really achieve the kind of success that you want to achieve. At least not on, it won't be as fulfilling.
Yeah, yeah, and I think if I know you and I have talked about this extensively over the years, and especially as I was kind of going through your certification to be a coach here, but. I think it's important to realize that sometimes our life and our goals really aren't our own. And I think that's maybe what you're getting at a little bit with that is, you may be doing things because that's what you were supposed to, or maybe that's what your parents wanted or your spouse or whatever. And suddenly, your goals are really somebody else's and you're really kind of living somebody else's life. And so it's finding your own unique purpose and your own why, connecting that to your goals. So I'm glad that you included that both in your process, but also in the title, because I think that is important.
Yeah, great point. Thanks, David.
Absolutely. Okay. So talk to me a little bit. I know you don't want to give all your secrets away. That's what the book's for, right? But how does your goal setting system outlined in your book help readers design their life with purpose? So tell us a little bit about how your goal system comes into play here.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate that. So I kind of go back to the comment I made a few minutes ago, and it says, considering when you consider the point of all the noise that's in the world, I called them distractions earlier, all the things that are going on that keep us from staying focused on what it is we want to accomplish. It's really important for us to sit and take the time to understand what it is we really truly do want, right? So I just referenced, kind of knowing who you are, but what I've experienced and many times over is that most people have no clue what it is. They've never sat down and consciously thought about, hey, who do I really want to be? For instance, one of the exercises that I had to go through was I had to with the Jack Canfield organization, when I went through that certification process, one of the things that I learned early on was this concept of a life purpose exercise. And it's a meditation process that you go through, and you find your life purpose by climbing this mountain, this all-knowing person, shares a gift with you, and that gift with you is supposed to give you some, it's a visual icon of some sort that basically explains what your life purpose is. And I struggled with the meditation early on, as many people do, particularly people who have a problem turning things off like I do.
Yeah.
So since then, I've gotten much better at it. But initially, there was this process, a process where you just kind of write down, what are the things that are really important to you. And so this is an entire process of figuring out what your life purpose is, right? In addition to that, I have some other exercises that go through, really kind of get to the core of who you are and or ultimately want to be. And with that, it really kind of leads you down the path of kind of tying your goals to your values. Because if your goals aren't in alignment with your values, then it's kind of like putting needing to replace your roof and putting the ladder up against the wrong house, right? You can't get from here to there, right? So the challenge is if my values are a certain way and I set these goals that, to your point earlier, my wife wants me to do or my parents want me to do. I remember years ago I dated a woman who she wanted to, her parents really wanted her to be a lawyer, and she had never really thought about what she really wanted to do. And consequently, she went through 4 years of undergrad. She went on to get her degree from UCLA Law School and got her degree in law, only to 5 years later not be practicing law anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's just not what she really wanted to do. It wasn't in alignment with her values, but she was raised for years and years and years that that's what you need to do. That's what you need to do. Get this good job. And she got the good job, but she just wasn't fulfilled. It wasn't really what she wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
So ironically, the important part is you got to kind of bring it back to the beginning and say, okay, what is it that's important to me? And then when you've got that and you're very comfortable with that, when you set those goals, then you double check and make sure those goals are in alignment with those values. And consequently, you get a far better system. You get internal inspiration as opposed to motivation, right? Because nobody can make me do something. But if I really, truly want to do something internally, I will find a way to walk through walls to get it done. Right. And that's kind of where we want to get our people to, so that they're so motivated and so excited they'll do whatever it takes to get those to achieve those goals. And that's kind of some of the things that really kind of tie into what makes my system so effective.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the key word, right, is system as well. I mean, you've used this, obviously kind of perfected yourself over 20 years and have really taught it to thousands of people. But, I think the fact that it is systematic means that, anybody kind of wherever they are, whether they're just starting out in life or maybe in their 60s, kind of realizing, hey, I'm not loving where I'm at, and maybe they want to reevaluate. I mean, kind of anybody can plug into this system, work through the exercises, specifically, doing that in your companion guide is going to get the most out of it. So I think, really for people to plug in, use the system, they will uncover that purpose. And you think about, anybody who's watching this, if you were to just ask them, hey, what's your purpose in life? Or, what are you most passionate about? What gets you excited? What gets you out of bed in the morning? You're probably going to get either some scratching heads because they don't know what it is, or they might just give you a canned response of, well, yeah, I got to provide for my family. And that's not a very fulfilling or purpose-filled life. And I think that's one of the things you get at in your system. And just I think it's an important consideration that, people need to take into account when they're setting their goals. So appreciate the
yeah, and I appreciate the add on there, because that's a big piece for a lot of people to understand, is that providing for your family is absolutely important. It's a responsible thing to do. And lots of things we do in life, we do out of responsibility, because that's who we are. Again, getting back to that, who am I as an individual? I'm a responsible individual. I take on responsibility because that's my nature, right? That's not everybody's nature, but that happens to be mine. It happens to be your nature, right? And a lot of people that we know are like that. So we take on the responsibility, but then also often kind of impedes on that ability, that time that we have to do the other things that we're even more passionate about. Right? And so, for instance, I know I've known single mothers who, they want to achieve really great things at work, but they're constantly in conflict with this obligation, this moral obligation of being a good mother. And what does that look like? And how much time should I spend here? And how do I do that? And just being able to balance that really helps understand, quite honestly, at the end of the day, the best example that you can make for your child is showing your child that you live a purpose-filled life.
Mm-hmm.
Achieve what's important to you. And when they see that, then they'll follow in those footsteps consequently, and they'll find that same fulfillment in their lives, which is a really important aspect to consider.
Yeah. And people need to think about this stuff. And a lot of them, they just haven't spent the time. And that's why a book like this is important for people, because it's going to force them to take that time to really analyze their life. And so I think, short of sitting down over a cup of coffee with you, this is about as close as, some people can get to that one-on-one goal setting, unless they do, one of our coaching programs or something. But you really kind of lay it out there and kind of spell out your journey too, which I think is important for people to realize.
Yeah, appreciate that.
So cool. Okay, I digress here. Kind of the last question I had on this was, how does your system help readers achieve success with goals? So we kind of talked about how your system helps them find their purpose, but success with goals, kind of talk to you about how this is maybe different than other goal setting programs and how this ultimately leads to that success.
Yeah, I guess I kind of said it already in a way, but what I'll add to it is that first of all, it cuts away the clutter. It really helps kind of streamline your focus by getting clear with who you are, what you want, and what really moves you. Then when you set those goals, like you could write, I've had different exercises where you write 101 things to do before I die, the bucket list or whatever.
Yeah.
And David, I know you've done a similar exercise.
Yeah.
And write all those things out. And a lot of those things are just kind of, this would be cool if, right? But some of them were like, if I die and this didn't happen, I would consider myself a failure. Right. And so there are certain things on that list, I would hope anyway, that you have on that list. You say, you know what, if I don't, raise my son a certain way, or, help or make my son feel loved every day of his life, or whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
That I would feel like I was a failure. And so but by getting clear what those things are that are really, really challenging and really moving you and motivate you and inspire you again to do the right things, that's the key. And so I think that's what sets my self-system apart, is that we get to the core of what that is. The challenge is, as I've said before, it's not just your simple goal setting process, right? Because anybody can teach a basic goal setting process. This isn't about that. It's been designing an entire life strategy, right? Knowing that 20 years from now, these are some of the goals that I'd like to achieve. But the reality is, what I do today is going to kind of formulate and determine what happens 20 years from now. And so for me, the challenge is recognizing that as an individual trying to set those goals is recognizing that every little thing that I do each day is going to determine how close or how far away I get from that goal 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, whatever that looks like on that bucket list. And so I guess with my system, really what I kind of look at, or what I hope help people understand, is that as you're kind of bringing this all together, we also put in an entire series of strategies, tactics, and action steps to help you kind of tie it all together. So first we kind of get into the whole, what's important, what do I need to do, where do I want to go, and all that. And then once we've got that, we come up with this whole entire strategy with a series of steps that are going to lead you down that path. And then finally, we finish it up with what I would call a cheat sheet of things that you can, say, hey, when you come up against this, you're going to have these inevitable challenges over the years, over the time, whatever. You're going to have bad weather on the day you're supposed to work out. You're gonna have your wife's circumstances take precedence over you having time to write your book, right? You have to go visit the family. Whatever it is, all those things that come up, you want to have adequate time to spend with your children while you're trying to build your side business. Whatever those things are, we have things to help you kind of understand, okay, when this comes up, this is how you should approach it.
Yeah.
Right. And then it kind of requires you to constantly go back and weigh in on, hey, what is it that's most important to me? And then how to strategically set that up and then create that system and move forward. So you don't lose that momentum by kind of stalling out or slowing down. You'll have your periods of time where things will naturally slow down. But having a way to kind of reel yourself back in is really what I believe is what makes the difference. And then ultimately, if you incorporate, you mentioned it earlier, but our coaching sessions, our coaching program, if you incorporate our coaching program with this, the advantage that you have is that when you kind of get off track in your own mind and you're like frustrated, you have somebody to reach out to. It's just as a voice of reason to kind of help remind you, hey, this is what you said was really important. Is that still the case? Because I think that's oftentimes what happens with people with goals, David, is that they set a goal today. This is what I want to accomplish 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. And then a year or two into it, something comes up. So life changes. And, that goal's not as important as it once was.
Right.
And consequently, now I look back on it and I say, okay, well, I want to redirect that. I'm not changing the goal. I just might redirect it a little bit.
Right.
And so the flexibility of being able to do that is extremely important.
Yeah, I know, and I'm glad you touched on that because, I think you and I both like to read. I mean, how many books have we read where you'll read 200 pages or more or less or whatever, but you read through an entire book and there wasn't a single piece of actionable advice. It's just all this kind of theory and, it kind of makes you feel good when you read it, but you kind of close the book and you're like, I can't change. This didn't cause me to change anything in my life to get better. I'm happy to say that your book is not that way. Because even if, people don't take advantage of the coaching programs and the awesome companion guide that goes with the book, you can read the book and still do the activities and have very specific, tangible things that you need to do. And in fact, some of the things are going to be, fairly difficult and a little bit intensive, but more people, spend time watching TV than thinking about their future, right? I mean, if you think about it, if you invested 2 hours a week doing nothing but thinking about your future, that's a foreign concept to people, right? And that's just kind of where we're at as a culture. And I think your book is kind of a cool wake-up call to remind people to spend time focusing on what matters and getting closer to it every day using your system. So I certainly appreciate that about your book.
Yeah, thank you. I'll add something. It's a little stat that I found out. The average person watches, and I don't remember the specific number of hours that they watch, but the number of commercials that a person watches in the course of a month, the hours of commercials that they watch in the course of a month. Of course, the world today with TiVo and everything like that, people fast forward through a lot of that anymore. But generally speaking, live TV, football, whatever, basketball, whatever it is they're watching, assuming you're watching it live, the number of hours is in excess of, in the course of a month, in excess of 5 hours.
Wow.
Which ironically happens to be about the amount of time that I strongly encourage people to invest in their goal setting exercise once a year.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
there you go.
Yeah. So the time is there for us. We just have to make it a priority and then fit it into our busy lives.
Awesome. Love it. Well, a lot of great insights today, Eric. I appreciate you taking time to sit down and talk to us a little bit about your book, a little bit about your goal setting system. Folks, if you're watching this and maybe you're not real familiar with Eric, we just encourage you guys to connect with us on social media. Also, take a look at all of our blog posts. Definitely check out the book, Success with Goals. It's right now available in an ebook format, and we're going to have it available on print very soon. And you can also get the companion guide with that, which I strongly encourage because you're going to want to do these activities. So check it out, and we appreciate you spending some time with us today. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.